It's been a while. Today is an episode that's purely Italian because today we're going to analyze the Inter Milan versus Bodo match. Let's get started. Of course, Captain, what we saw today in the Inter Milan versus Bodo match can only be described as a scandal and humiliation for one of Italy's biggest clubs, or even for all of Italy. There's a lot to talk about, but honestly, I don't even know where to start. Let me start with what we talked about at the end of last season, before the Barcelona versus Inter Milan match, and after Inter Milan qualified at the expense of Barcelona, then after Inter Milan lost to Paris Saint-Germain by 5 goals. There's a phrase I've repeated every time. Inter Milan did not deserve to reach the final. This is the team that played against Barcelona last season and qualified at Barcelona's expense because of individual mistakes, which made people believe that Inter Milan was capable of competing with this team. This is the team whose fans tried to convince us and portray to us that Barella is superior to Pedri, and that the fans, players, and coach are better than what Barcelona has. But we all know that a single mistake from one player cost us a lot. And we all know that the absences at that time caused Inter Milan to appear on par with Barcelona in those matches. But reality and the truth were revealed in the match against Paris Saint-Germain and this season in the Champions League against Bodo. I'm not trying to belittle Inter Milan here, but here I'm opening old wounds and talking about the decline of Italian football as a whole. Why and how? What does the state of Italian football have to do with Inter Milan? Captain, Inter Milan is one of the biggest clubs in Italy. And in the past, it was one of the best clubs in the world. And their qualification to the Champions League final twice in 3 years is not a standard for remaining among the elite clubs. The truth and reality tell you that Inter Milan, in terms of development, is not working on nurturing talent. They're not working on transfers. They're not functioning well administratively or on the pitch, not even in terms of tactical development on the field. So let's talk about one of Inter Milan's problems. They signed Chivu instead of Simone Inzaghi. Chivu, who came in and took over the team as it was. In fact, he even got reinforcements with players who strengthened the bench, something Simone Inzaghi didn't have last season, while maintaining the same tactical formation. 3-5-2, the Italian mentality and tactical formation, and the shift to a 5-3-2 defensively, which has its positives and negatives that we saw today, and which we will talk about. This tactical setup and this game system, the playing system that Simone Inzaghi established, was continued by Chivu, who made only very minor adjustments, almost negligible. Today we saw Inter Milan, or rather, the ghost of Inter Milan, a dead ghost, Captain. Inter Milan today lost to Bodo, who reached the round of 16 in the UEFA Champions League for the first time in their history. We don't want to belittle Bodo because Bodo's level has been on the rise recently, especially over the last 2 years. 2 years ago, they reached the quarterfinals of the Conference League, and last season, they reached the semifinals of the Europa League. And now they've made it to the round of 16 after defeating Atletico Madrid and Inter Milan, both home and away, as well as Manchester City. So they're a good team. In fact, they've become very good and are competing with big teams. But that doesn't mean Inter Milan should appear against them, especially on their own turf, just as they did against Paris Saint-Germain in the final, without identity, without spirit. For 90 minutes, I watched Inter Milan's players playing as if they were the ones winning. There wasn't a single player running for the ball or asking for it properly. Not a single player when the ball went out showed that Italian grinta we all know. No one rushed to get the ball quickly. The fans were upset with their team. We didn't see the same kind of cheering from Inter Milan fans that we used to see before. 90 minutes relying only on crosses from Di Marco, without any clear ideas. It's shameful for Inter Milan to appear so exposed just because Calhanoglu or Lautaro Martinez, whose performance has already declined this season, are absent. It's shameful for Inter Milan to show up in the same way as last season's final, with the same ideas they played with all of last season. And with a change of coach, there hasn't even been the slightest improvement. Someone might say to me, "Coach, but Inter Milan is leading Serie A by 10 points. Yes, Captain. In fact, let me add even more to that. Inter Milan is the team with the most goals scored in Serie A, with 62 goals, and the second team with the fewest goals conceded in Serie A with 21 goals. Their numbers are impressive, but if this shows anything, it shows the current weakness of Serie A. Serie A keeps declining and deteriorating. And of course, what's the reason? The reason is the federation. The decline in the level of the clubs is due to the Italian federation itself neglecting Serie A. The Italian federation that destroyed the clubs. Clubs don't have the money to sign players. Clubs don't have the resources to develop talents. When was the last time you heard about a truly valuable Italian talent? Okay, in the last 10 or 15 years. Which Italian players from the new generation can we really mention in recent years? You have Donnarumma as a goalkeeper, Bastoni as a defender, and Barella. Sometimes he's up, sometimes he's down. And that's the level of Italian players. The Italian national team itself exited the World Cup in the group stage. Same thing happened in 2014, and they haven't appeared in the World Cup since then. And they might not even qualify for the next World Cup. Italy, which was once the paradise of football, has become the hell of football, and the fans of Inter Milan and other clubs are sad for their teams because these clubs used to be among the best in the world. When you see Milan, Juve, and Inter struggling now in the Champions League, know that the situation is over and it needs to be rebuilt from scratch. The Italian mentality is something the clubs don't want to let go of. We want to play with the same tactics, the same ideas. For years, we haven't wanted to develop, even though Italian football has produced a number of new up-and-coming coaches who have made an impact. For example, De Zerbi could have been the focus of attention for the elite and top clubs in Italy. The same goes for Lecce's coach and Osasuna's coach who defeated Real Madrid a couple of days ago. He could also be a coach attracting the attention of elite clubs. Italy no longer relies on itself, neither in terms of coaches nor in terms of players, not even when it comes to renewing ideas. Italy, which used to be the source of football ideas and the center of attention for the world's top stars. Today, how many Italian players can you name who play outside the Italian league? Donnarumma and Tonali, you really have to think hard to name a third whose level is truly noteworthy. Captain, today Inter Milan, in the match we watched, embodies and represents Italian football over the last 15 years. It's a sad and disappointing situation for me. And when at the end of last season we were fighting and saying, guys, be patient when I expect Barcelona to win. As reality and logic dictate, Barcelona gave you the spot. But that's you as things stand. That's just your level now, regardless of who you are in Italy. Juventus lost 5-2 against Galatasaray in the first leg. They may fail to qualify. Italian football and its clubs are in a sad state. And yet, Captain, when you come and look at the tactics in today's match, what's happening? There are no clear ideas. You see a team trying to implement just two ideas, nothing else. Playing crosses from the right and left flanks, and that's it. Inter Milan, which is supposed to protect the center today, conceded 2 goals, one of them during the build-up and the other during the opponent's progression, without a single player in the central area in Zone B, neither Parla, nor Zielinski, nor Frattesi. And with the second goal, neither Susek nor Barla nor any other player. And some strange substitutions for the coach. Support the flanks with 2 fullbacks and 2 wingers without including a striker. Without introducing a midfielder to control the midfield. The ghost of Inter Milan? Look, Captain, what we saw from Inter Milan in the first half were nice ideas, but without any real dangerous chances on goal. I mean, organized ideas that could create danger, but lacking the penultimate touch needed to make the final one. What does that mean? It's true that Inter Milan started with a 3-5-2 formation. This tactical setup required the presence of Marcus Thuram and Esposito as 2 number 9s inside the penalty area, and Luis Enrique positioned on the wing, De Marco on the wing, Barella, Frattesi, Zielinski behind them, Akanji, Bastoni, Bisek. So how were these ideas implemented? The first idea was to play on the right side. Enrique would move to the wing, Esposito at the near post, Thuram in the center, and Di Marco would move to the far post. What does this require from Barella? It requires Barella to move to the flank instead of Di Marco for defensive recovery in case a counter-attack happens from that side. On the other hand, Zielinski moves up here and lines up alongside Frattesi. Does it end here? Of course not. In the end, Bodo drops back to defend with at least 6 players. Who is the player that makes the underlap? The player who takes that step is Bisek, who moves into this area. Bisek, in some very impressive roles that I noticed in his partnership with Enrique, is able, despite being a center-back, to escape the pressure and move into this area to deliver a cross into the penalty box. Bisek was an idea. Enrique and the crosses sent into the penalty area, but without any real threat on goal. The ball reached Esposito, the ball reached Thuram, but without a decisive finish. Di Marco for balls that would rebound to the far post for a follow-up with a second ball or a direct shot on goal. Also a chance after it was sent in from Luis Enrique's side, but without any real threat, without an actual shot on target, without completion. Another point, when most of Bodo's players move into the central areas, Zielinski drops back as a pivot, and Barla shifts to this side. And of course here, Hog and Ho are the ones responsible for the attack, and Blomberg drops down alongside Barla. So Barla becomes alongside Frattesi. So in this situation, you see Inter Milan's midfield trio have the freedom to move. There is decentralization in their movement. Barla moves into this space. These are Barla's boundaries. But Barla's movements depend on DiMarco's movements. Don't forget that in the 3-5-2 formation, since the wingback plays along the entire flank, he is the player who gets exhausted the most. So when he takes on attacking roles, I need to step up and cover for him. When I step up to cover for him, Zielinski gets closer to Fratesi. Move up, Bastoni, move up, Akanji. Bissaka takes on attacking roles alongside Henrique. When Bissaka drops back, Fratesi moves in next to Henrique in this space, and Zielinski drops into the center, and at that point, Barella covers and returns to his original position. Alright, the ideas are there, but what is Inter Milan missing? Sometimes they're missing the penultimate touch, and at other times, they're missing the final touch. So that's regarding the attack from the right side. Now let's look at the attack from the left side. When DiMarco is out wide on the flank, Thuram moves to the far post and Esposito comes in at the near post. Zielinski is positioned further forward. Fratesi takes the initiative to stay back, along with Bissek and Akanji. And here Bastoni gains the ability to push forward and support the attack. Of course, here the play is happening on the wing. So you see Bodo's team overloading Inter Milan's left side. DiMarco needs to combine with Barella or with Bastoni. And Barella is freed up by Bastoni joining in to play with the pair. At the moment Bastoni receives the ball, it's either DiMarco making an overlapping run or Barella making an underlapping run, with one of them staying while the other makes the run to receive the through pass, and then comes the cross. This was happening over and over again. And at other times you see Barella dropping to the flank, while DiMarco moves into central areas, and this requires Zielinski to move more towards the left side, and Fratesi pushes up to cover this area. And here Akanji and Bissaka step up for defensive coverage, covering in an advanced position. And that's why we saw Zielinski and Fratesi, when the play was on the left side, sometimes receive the ball in central areas and shoot directly at the goal. Direct shots from outside the penalty area created chances, but they weren't dangerous because the final touch wasn't precise. Alright, so what is the strength of the 3-5-2 formation that Inter Milan relies on? It's the crosses sent in from the flanks, whether from the left or the right. But what does it require? It requires having an extra number of players inside the penalty area who are good in the air. So who is Inter Milan keeping inside the penalty area? Thuram and Esposito. Who is the other player who is inside the penalty area? Sometimes you see Barella on the edge of the box when he moves more towards the center or closer to DiMarco. So if the play is on the left side, Henrik moves more towards the center, but he still keeps the fallback line, so he doesn't enter the penalty area. What does this require from Inter Milan's players? Okay, players on the edge of the box, Barella move further inside, or the better option is for Barella, Zielinski, Fratesi to stay, and then you start to see the sacrifice. Bissek moves in for headers if the play is on the left side, and Bastoni moves in if the play is from the right side. Why? Because as long as the play is from the right side, so I have no problem with one of the defenders moving out on the left side, and Akanji steps up while Bissek covers the central area. And Henrique knows he's required to quickly track back to provide defensive support, and he becomes the third defender. And if the play is on the left side, then no. Bastoni stays in position. Akanji remains in the central area. Bissek moves in, and at the moment the ball is crossed, Akanji has taken Bissek's position. Bastoni has moved into the center, and DiMarco must be tasked with quickly tracking back. And if not, then you have the same situation as well. 3 players in the center of the field whose job is to apply counter-pressing and quickly win the ball back. So Inter Milan was solid defensively. But when it came to finishing in front of goal, they needed more players inside the box and more accurate passing. That was what was missing, the final touch. And of course, Captain, the real problem isn't here. The problem is that in the second half, the team that was proactive and in control, Inter Milan, became the team that had to defend itself. In the second half, Inter Milan improved one thing in the opening minutes, which was that Thuram and Esposito started to find Fratesi inside the penalty area alongside them. And of course, the opponent was defending with excellent shape and organization. Henrique on the flank, DiMarco on the flank, Barella, Zielinski, Akanji, Bissaka, Bastoni. This is the team's shape and the same style of play. Passing the ball on the flank and sending it into the penalty area, hoping it would reach one of the players' heads. And all of them were wasted balls, especially those that reached Fratesi's side at the far post. Random balls going out of play. Alright, then Chivo wanted to make some changes and substitutions. The first thing he did was bring on Diouf and play him on the left side instead of Henrique. So now you had Diouf and DiMarco on the flank. But I don't need a player on the flank. I need a player in the middle, so even if Diouf is going to play, let him move more into the penalty area, because what Diouf did was exactly what DiMarco did in the second half. All they did was send in crosses, nothing more. So now you had two players playing on the flank with the same roles, and you lost a player in the middle. Why did you lose a player in the middle? Because Fratesi went off, and Boni came in, and Zielinski went off, and Sušić came in, and the team literally looked like this. Okay, so there weren't any extra players inside the penalty area to help the two strikers, which gave the opponent a numerical advantage. In fact, the opponent had a numerical advantage in every area, especially in this space in the center of the field. Inter Milan, who play a 3-5-2 and always aim to protect the central area, today conceded 2 goals. One of which happened while they were building up from the back because there wasn't a single player in the central area. We saw Akanji receiving the ball and coming under direct pressure. All of Inter Milan's players were pushed forward and there wasn't a single player available for him to pass to in that space. Akanji was forced. Although it was his mistake, he could have passed to Bissaka, but he didn't. He moved closer, hoping that one of the players would drop back, would move down into the central area, but not a single player did that, so he made a mistake. He could have originally passed to the right side and launched Bissaka on the attack. However, Akanji insisted on building up play through the central area even though there wasn't a single player in that zone. And as a result, they conceded a goal. The same thing happened with the second goal, but not during the build-up phase. Rather, it was during Bodo's progression, where there was a huge gap in the central areas and a numerical advantage. They moved the ball quickly, reached Inter Milan's goal, and scored. What happened to Inter Milan? Why bring on Augusto instead of Dimarco after Dimarco was done for the match? And bring on Dumfries instead of Bisek? It was the same situation after Bisek was finished. You no longer had any player who could link the lines. Total control by Bodo's players in the midfield. Barella was finished and Sušić had no one to connect with. And all the players were out on the flanks, while you needed players in the heart of the penalty area. What happened to Inter Milan in this match? It was almost the same tactical setup, almost the same names, but even reinforced with substitutes, and that's what we saw from Inter Milan today. And of course, Captain, after everything I've told you, I can confirm that Inter Milan needs a lot to return to the top. It's the same situation for all the clubs in the Italian league. Their exit today from the round of 16 playoffs is humiliating for the name of Inter Milan. And personally, as a Barcelona fan who has loved Inter Milan in the Italian league for a very long time, I was waiting for this team to qualify and hoping to face them. And I wanted to see Barcelona and Inter Milan play again, but luck wasn't on our side. If it had happened, you really would have seen the true rivalry we witnessed last season, which was only decided because of the Barcelona players' lack of effort. The truth would have come out if this match had been replayed, and I really wanted to see that match. I wanted to get revenge, but Inter Milan can't even reach the stage where we could see if we could get that revenge or not. At the moment, Inter Milan is weaker than that, just like all the Italian clubs, and that's unfortunate. Then someone might think I'm speaking out of spite towards Italian football. On the contrary, we grew up with Italian football, but that was during the era of those in charge of the Italian Federation. That's our opinion. Share your opinion with us in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Don't forget to like, comment, share, and greetings.